Good evening, folks. Welcome to Radio Fremantle, 107.9 FM, The Source. Good evening. My name is Benjamin. It's been a couple of weeks. I'm very happy to be back. Hi out there, all you folks in Radio Land. Thanks very much for joining us. And hello out there as well to Robin and his lovely partner Leah, who was handling the show the last couple of weeks. Thank you very much, you two, for coming in there and doing fine work and bringing more information to the masses. It's really important, some of the information there, and I hope you folks enjoyed their input for the time on the program, and they will be back again the week after this one to come back and do it again, hopefully. So you'll be seeing them again some more. Now, this week on the program, I'm very, very glad to have two gentlemen that have come on once before to talk about a very special topic. And I will get onto that very, very soon. I just need to do a couple of little housekeeping things here. Firstly, just remind all you folks out there, for the ones who really haven't listened too many times to this program, more than the ones who listen quite a bit. Ones who listen quite a bit know right what's coming up next. The ones who don't, welcome. Thanks for joining us. The subjects we like to cover here on the Source radio program on 107.9 FM Radio Fremantle. We cover subjects such as metaphysics, quantum physics, spirituality, astronomy, world events, geophysics, earth changes, human consciousness, planetary and human ascension, health, DNA, Mayan and Indigenous prophecy, and the list goes on and on. I won't need to continue there. But the facts are there's a lot to be said and not a lot of time, so we try and cram it in the small 2-hour slots once per week. So I hope you enjoy our efforts. I'll give you the details as well to contact us here at the radio station. The number to dial. You can call us in on the studio, and there will be opportunities to do that tonight. These gentlemen we have on will be taking questions at a certain time. 9494 2100 08. That's the Perth metropolitan area in little sunny Western Australia. If you're dialing from interstate, I wouldn't suggest it. The charges can be outrageous unless you've got a fantastic plan. At any rate, 9494 2100. You can email the radio station directly, admin@radiofremantle.com. That's ADMIN @radiofremantle.com. Live streaming, we are up with the technology here in little old Radio Fremantle. If you do want to just log in directly via the internet on your PC or laptop or iPod or iPad or whatever you have, radiofremantle.com is the website, radiofremantle.com. The homepage, index page there, top right-hand corner, big yellow button, listen here live. Just go ahead and press that button. You'll log right in. Don't forget as well, we do have the archive section, which archives the radio program for 7 days. And you can listen to this program over and over and over and bore your friends and relatives and send out CDs and do whatever you like. That's about it. Oh, one last thing. The Source radio program email, this is generally the one people get me on. Feel free to use that one. That's the one I'll respond quickest to if you do have any questions, queries, comments, or the like. source107.9fm @hotmail.com. Real easy one. SOURCE 107.9fm @hotmail.com. You can make use of that anytime, any day of the week, and I will get back to you at any time. I really do appreciate your input. Again, very much so. This the idea is behind this radio program at a time like this when we're trying to uncover as much useful information at this time of incredible change in this planet. If you find things that you want to forward on to me, and I do get that all the time, and I'm very grateful to the individuals who take the time to clue me in on what they've found out about the world in which we live and the paradigm that is changing before our very eyes, forward it to that email, and if it requires a response, I will do that. Or if you just want to chat and say hi and tell me how much you love the show, then by all means, pump up my ego. Apart from that, that's about it for the housekeeping. So sit back in the old lazy boy and pour that cup of tea and a couple of bickies and get ready for a fantastic show. So we're going to get straight into it now. As some of you may recall, those who do listen on a more regular basis, a few weeks ago I had two gentlemen come on, one Peter Webb and Derek Grimm. Now, these gentlemen are involved in a little association here in Perth who deal with the Urantia book. I say deal as in they study a very, very special item, very, very special book that is basically a collation of cosmology and teachings, history, and, philosophical studies, a whole round theories and concepts which basically have to do with who we are, what we're doing here, and what possibly could be the reasons for our being here on the planet. It's a big undertaking, a big task, but over 1,000 pages, this thing does cover it pretty well. Peter and Derek, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, Benjamin.
Thanks for joining us again. Over 2,000, was it, Derek? I'm sorry, it was over 1,000 at least, but 2,000 does sound close to the mark. Thanks very much for joining us again, gentlemen. Now, as I mentioned before we started the tonight's broadcast, that we were going to take the time out briefly, if we might, to recap again about exactly what the Urantia book is in a generalized way for those people who are not aware of it, before we get into the meat and drink of the majority of the information. Now, firstly, if you wouldn't mind, Derek or Peter, I'll leave it in your court to start, but can you just basically tell us exactly what is the Urantia book, a little bit about its history, and what you're going to talk to us about it tonight?
All right. Well, it's hard to say basically, but basically, our belief is that the Urantia book is a new and epical revelation of universal truth to our planet.
Basically.
That's as basic as it gets in most ways. As you mentioned before, it covers a wide range of topics such as God, cosmology, the origin and destiny of mankind, life after death, the history of our planet, both spiritually and physical, and also a huge detailed account of the life and teachings of Jesus when he was here on earth. And not only does it talk about all these things, but it manages to synthesize all of these topics into one unbelievably masterfully crafted whole. It's just absolutely amazing book.
And what I think is important as well to note, before some people who might not be familiar at all with the Urantia book, which in the majority of cases are not familiar with the Urantia book, that's why we're doing this interview this evening, but when you start speaking about God, even that three-letter word, that tiny little word in itself, comes up with a lot of preconceived notions and ideas. A lot of people. What I'm trying to say is, not necessarily this book has anything to do with religion. This is not a religious book per se. This is not necessarily something that's suggesting that you need to be part of a group or some such to understand or follow indoctrinated teachings. Basically, what it is, in a very, very general sense, is more of a historic take, more of a factual accounting of the state of the reality of our universe, who we are and what we're doing here. Would you agree with that statement is fairly accurate?
I'd agree, but I'd also build on that.
Yeah.
Because it's also an expanded revelation of who God is and his relation not only to the universe but to us as individuals.
And above and beyond a lot of religious teachings that maybe we're more familiar with.
Yeah. I mean, I think the fundamental message in terms of religion is that it talks about a personal relationship with God as being true religion, rather than having to
congregate or to go through another person.
Community is a very powerful thing, but you're right. It's not necessary to have intermediaries telling you.
Very big point.
Telling you their interpretation of who God is and what he's saying. Because all of us have equal access to God on a personal level.
And I think, if I can just interject at this small point as well, another reason why it's so vital, I think, that this information about the Urantia book and other revelations of a similar vein become more apparent. A lot of people don't identify the necessity, possibly as such, that a God or a spiritual aspect of our lives really exists, because for the majority of people in many lanes of life don't necessarily experience any kind of spiritual or godlike experience. especially when you're working 10 to 12 hours a day, you have a mortgage and 2 kids, you don't get to congregate in a church on a Sunday, or you don't get to attend a mosque on any particular holy day, or wear your yarmulke and attend other types of things. And a lot of people, for the most part, have kind of made a separation of the reality of our existence in the basis that we really are spiritual beings. And the reality of our existence here, if we don't take into account that reality and start to bring into our own consciousness this sense of ourselves, our divine self, we're not going to be able to move forward and evolve as humanity really should. We're not going to be able to make those steps away from war, corruption, greed, pollution, and these things about not taking care of our planet. All these aspects which really are indicative or remind us that that's a very ungodlike way. It's not about humanity. It's not about spirituality. It's not about the health and longevity of the species of our human species and the planet itself. So we really need to bring this understanding more fully into a general consensus of the community, so that everyone is aware of this reality. So for me, again, you didn't mention it quite yet, but I just really wanted to ram that home, that this is necessary information for us to really help to uncover more of the truth of the matter about why we're here and what we need to accomplish.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So, again, very excited. So, carry on, please. More about the introduction. Now, the book, its origins are a little stooped in mystery. I know there's not a lot of information, but give what you know about its origins, or where this book first surfaced.
All right. It has its origins in Chicago during the first half of the 20th century. And as you said, its origins are steeped in mystery, and there's a reason for that. And the reason is that they don't want to have the book associated with one particular individual. They want the book to stand on the strength of its message. So nobody knows really how exactly the book got here. Okay.
So for the most part, it surfaced in Chicago. It was received by individuals, but the authors largely unknown completely.
The authors are known to the extent that they're identified at the end of each of the papers. I think it's 197 papers or something.
196.
96, yeah. And at the end of each paper, the author is actually identified, not by name, but like what kind of being they are.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was going to clarify that point a little further. The authors not necessarily are suggesting in this book to be necessarily
not human.
Blokes from Brooklyn or any place.
Celestial personalities or super material beings, I guess you could. There's a lot of different ways to.
And we could go into that. That's a topic in and of itself, but that's fairly indicative of what we're trying to uncover here. Fine. Right. So it's a book that is authored by beings known and unknown, or at least half realized to the full extent of who they are.
Yeah.
But the reality is the focus has been on the message within the book, and not the people who wrote the book itself.
Well, in terms of not wanting it to be associated with a particular individual, they're talking about a human person,
right,
such as Paul or Wesley or somebody like
Dave.
that, right? Dave, yes, it's always Dave. Yeah. So, yeah, that's why the exact way that it was received is shrouded in some sort of mystery. So.
Great, and that's fine. And now this book is in general circulation, pretty much. We can pick this
all
book
over the world. It's been translated into several languages now. There's more translations being worked on as we speak. Yeah, so I think the goal would be to have it in pretty much every major language in the world as soon as possible.
It's great. And, I was reading the other day, briefly I'll mention this, that you gentlemen are probably both familiar with the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Oh, yes.
Right, and this is an aspect, again, what I really like about the Dead Sea Scrolls is that it was, a gospel or series of gospels written by other people than the ones indicated in such thing as the Bible, but the the information sheds a really different light in some aspects. One of the man they call Jesus Christ, and also other personalities and identities of the day, and it really helps to broaden and open people's minds as to more about what time was like there and what more was taught and what more understandings there is to be made than this one particular book. For instance, for the Christian world, the Catholic world, that for instance use this particular book. And Urantia is another book that does this. It builds upon and expounds upon ideas that were introduced to mankind, again, for instance, through the Bible, and takes that point and takes those ideas and expands them further as man has expanded his mind and, purportedly evolved to a certain degree. So has the information. And I find that that's fantastic. It really does seem like the time now for that type of information contained in the Urantia book to make its way more into the mainstream. And I really do. It does appear to me that it's doing that. It's very gratifying to see. Do you blokes feel like it is as well?
It is, but slowly. Because
Slowly.
The method of it getting out is by word of mouth.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no door knocking or anything like that going on.
No. Collection.
It's all very word of mouth, and it's being spread very, very slowly. But as more people get it and more people talk about it, more people hear about it, more people will read it.
Excellent. And this is, well, if anybody's listening live streaming right now, they can open up a window and find this right now, can't they? There's an online version available.
Yeah.
If they just open up a browser and a search engine and typed in Urantia book PDF or some such, you could bring something straight up onto the screen, because there is versions online, is it?
There is a PDF, but a lot of the Urantia related sites have links to an online version of the book itself.
Okay, terrific. Yeah. So, but if they were to just type in Urantia book, they'd be able to find it quick, smart.
Find it pretty quick. Yeah.
Great. If you want to peruse it, it is definitely a huge book and necessary to research it in more detail to understand some of the concepts contained therein. But if you want to have a quick browse while you're listening to this interview, you can just type in on your browser and start to browse the contents page to get some idea of the scope of this masterpiece, right?
Yeah, that's pretty mind-blowing just on its own.
Yeah.
Contents. Yeah.
All right, so let's go on then. So basically we've done that. You've explained that introduction nicely. What direction are we going to start heading into? I believe you got some juicy ideas. We're going to head into further some of the ideas about Jesus Christ, and then also some other ones. Where are we going first?
Well, last time we were here, we spoke mostly regarding cosmology and theology and universe organization revealed to us in the book. I think this time, because we didn't have time last time to talk about the Lucifer rebellion and Adam and Eve, so I think we'll sort of continue with our story today.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. I think I'd like to open it up with a quote, if that's okay.
By all means.
This quote is from a very, very well-known Urantian-related researcher named Halbert Katzen, and he runs a site called ubthenews.com. And what he does is he writes all kinds of reports on how science is catching up to the science and history as depicted in the Urantia book.
Terrific.
It's really cool.
Terrific.
So this is something that he said. One of the defining characteristics of epical revelations is that distinct from personal or individual revelation, there is always an objectively verifiable quality of superhuman credibility.
Gee, okay, that's a mouthful.
This is because it's intended for the whole planet, and it's important for epical revelation to help unify a planet. The Urantia book is presented in this fashion, and the authors maintain that the historic facts will stand on the records of the ages to come. No other book on this planet is so richly detailed in so many aspects of both science and history, and exhibits the unique pattern of having science and scholarship catch up to it. And this is what Halbert has said.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely true, and we're hoping to show that tonight.
So, you got a big task ahead of you.
Sure do. Yeah, definitely. So in this context, this is the context that we want to use to talk about the major historical events of our distant, very distant past, as described in the Urantia book. And then hopefully if we have time, we'll talk a little bit about how science and scholarship are beginning to catch up to what we're told.
Let's do it.
All right. So, you want to give it a go, Peter?
Well, the main reasons for our problems on the planet at the moment are the Lucifer rebellion and the default of Adam and Eve. So we're going back in time here to, firstly, the Lucifer rebellion. Who was Lucifer? Well, according to the book, Lucifer was what we call a system sovereign. Now, a system sovereign is basically a spiritual administrator to a number of inhabited planets in the local universe. If you can imagine a local system comprises of up to 1,000 planets. That's inhabited planets. And that's only a small part of a local universe. So if you've got the picture, you've got Lucifer was an administrative executive of a small part of the local universe. And he was, according to the book, one of the most brilliant and able of his kind. But unfortunately, Lucifer rebelled against the universe government.
Now we're all familiar with, well, for a majority of the Western world who are steeped more in religions involved with the Bible, familiar with Lucifer, we identify him usually as that fallen angel, that guy who worked for God, who went out of bounds and acted in a way unbecoming of someone of his station. He was cast out. Now this is basically then collaborating with the information in the Urantia book, is that right?
This is the real story.
This is the real deal. This is the real deal.
And it's very detailed.
So basically, sorry, continue. I just wanted to, obviously we're familiar with this concept.
Yeah, we'll go into time scale. The Bible's account is, it comes down as a mythical story, but I mean, because it was so long ago, and because in those days there weren't books, there might have been tablets, and
the civilization was not at the stage that the civilization is currently at. We're talking stone tools and barely horse and cart, and spears and crucifixions. The information that they needed to, if you were talking about systems sovereign and such, and trying to get this idea across to people who, for the most part, were just learning to deal with fire, you couldn't really quite communicate certain concepts in a way beyond their ability to comprehend. So fallen angel will do the trick for me. I think most people can do for that, but now we're willing and able to get into the more nitty-gritty about the detailed aspects. Please, by all means, I just want to make that connection. All right.
Now, what happened when Lucifer rebelled against the universe government rule? Our system of planets, of which our planet is one of the system, we became isolated from the rest of the local universe. When we say isolation, we became isolated. We were isolated from the spiritual circuits of the universe, and
that was done deliberately, wasn't it?
It was done deliberately
because of his actions.
Because of his actions, and the reason why we became isolated was basically so that the rebellion wouldn't spread to other systems.
Okay, so it wasn't just him that rebelled.
No, he was the head guy.
He was the one that initiated this rebellion.
Okay.
And the way I equate it is that if you can imagine this, right throughout the universe, there's spiritual circuits everywhere. There's broadcasts to and from all different planets and spiritual realms. And if you can imagine, if on our planet, if you took away all electricity and all of a sudden the TVs all went out, there was no internet, there's no mobile phones.
Chaos.
No radio.
Chaos.
It'd be just quiet. It'd be just, that's it.
Yeah.
Silence would be deafening.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. All of a sudden, our system just went down. It just shut down, so that we became isolated from the rest of the universe.
So not only did the people, for instance, the little old human beings on a planet like this one, but you're talking about every single planet involved in the system, all the beings that inhabited those planets, all the celestial hierarchical structure within those systems, everything just had the wires cut.
Within our system.
Within the system.
Yeah.
Just a system.
Just to contain the rebellion.
Jeez.
We
Well,
went into quarantine.
so this okay, go on.
Yep, right, okay. Now, what Lucifer proposed, he had a Declaration of Liberty, and his Declaration of Liberty contains some pretty interesting points which we can talk about here. And the first one was the myth of the existence of the Universal Father. Well, because the Universal Father is not present physically in our universe, that he is in paradise, Lucifer was saying that the Creator Son, who was the head of our local universe, and various beings, keep control of the universe by creating this myth that this Universal Father rules the universe.
So that was the premise of the thrust of his argument, basically, that there was no celestial Father, or there was no God,
There was no God.
God highest of the high.
Father,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was
He
a
was
complete myth, and
he
that
was
just
just a
kept
myth.
everyone in line.
Yeah, just kept everyone happy and content.
Jeez,
Yep.
okay.
It's a big call, but as well as that, he opposed the rule of Michael. Now, Michael is the creator.
Michael?
Michael is the created son of our universe.
Hmm.
He is our father and our creator.
Okay.
Okay.
So is he God?
No,
Or
no, he's not God. He is a creator son. But if you go to paradise and you have the Father, the Universal Father, and the Eternal Son, together they create these created sons.
okay.
And right throughout the vast evolutionary universes, there are many created sons. But each created son is given his own universe of creation. And he is, for all intents and purposes, our Father and our Creator.
So if I can just clarify then, if we can have a quick snapshot of the true pyramid or hierarchy of command,
Yep.
at the very, very top
Yes.
is the highest of the high, which is this All-Father, what did you call
The
him?
Universal Father.
Universal Father. Now that's as high as you can get.
Yep, that's it.
Then below him is the Son.
Well, there's the Paradise Trinity, which consists of the Universal Father, the Eternal Son, and the Infinite Spirit.
Which we
They're-
did cover in the last.
We did.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're kind of indivisible.
But at the top of the tree is the Universal Father, the God of gods, the one at the very, very top of the tree.
Yeah.
And the ones who created, or the one who created us, who is our creator,
Yeah.
is not
He's not
not
God.
him.
He's not
He's part
direct-
of him,
not
but he's
direct-
created of
not
him.
directly.
Right.
Yeah. Indirectly, the Universal Father is the creator of all.
So the creator of the ones of us in particular is the one who commands
Is
or
Michael.
controls or created
Michael.
the local
Local
system, the
universe,
local
yeah.
universe.
Yes.
I see.
And
Okay.
he also created Lucifer.
Okay.
So we're all Michael's children in this
Okay.
universe.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. So what he's proposing is that Lucifer's saying that even though Michael is his own father and creator, he does not believe that Michael should be having supreme rule over the whole universe, because he is virtually, Michael is saying that he's ruling in absentum. What's the word?
Absenteeism.
Yeah.
Absentia. Yeah. Right. Sorry.
Absentee of the Father. I think that's how you say it.
So firstly, he's saying that there's no real Father of
There is
all.
no-
There's no.
He's
There's
saying
no
there's
real.
no Father, and he's also saying, well, how come how come Michael can rule? Because it's a mythical father. So his whole argument for ruling his universe is
Based on a false premise.
based on a false premise.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Right. Okay. And the third point, which in his Declaration of Liberty, is that there's an overemphasis on the training of mortal ascenders. Now, what happens with human beings when we die is we go into the spiritual realms, and we start progressing with our universe career.
Mm-hmm.
And a great deal of effort, a great deal of energy of beings a part of this ascension career program. And Lucifer seems to think that there's far too much emphasis being placed on this, on
So too much importance given to these lower ones being lifted up and moving
trained.
through the hierarchy,
Too
so to
much
speak.
effort on actually time spent training them.
yeah.
Wow. He really didn't think we were worth it.
Well, he seems to think that it's just they're being trained for some mythical future which
Because
doesn't
there's
exist
no...
in the-
right, I
in the-
see. Right.
in
So
the
whole
higher
premise-
universe, which he's just saying, well, this is just all a myth. We should be each planet should be looking after itself. It should be ruling itself. That's basically what it is.
Okay.
One thing that's interesting about that, though, is as against the whole training scheme that he was, not one ascendant mortal actually went over to his cause.
Oh, yeah? Well, after those comments, I'm not surprised. He's
Yeah.
pushing a few buttons.
Well, he is.
So it's kind of a testament to the effectiveness of the actual training plan that's in effect, is that it actually does work.
Well, yeah, it seems to be, if you can withstand the... sorry, go on there,
No,
Peter.
it's fine. He did. I mean, there was a lot of beings that did go over to his side.
Yeah.
And from all accounts, he was a very charismatic and brilliant being.
I did read accounts of the suggested oration by Lucifer when he was talking about his plan, and this is my not quite strongest understanding as you gentlemen, but that he was given free rein to speak his mind and to speak his piece and to make his argument. He wasn't told that he couldn't have his word, so he was allowed to say his piece.
Right.
Absolutely.
And he made his argument, and it was allowed for those people beneath him within his own jurisdiction to make their own minds up as to who they thought was the right way to go, to follow the path of this Lucifer, who, as you mentioned, was apparently incredibly charismatic and a fantastic orator and really just brilliant in the vein of this Michael Sun itself, who was the creator of this particular system. And I can't help but just imagine for a moment, wouldn't it be fantastic to have had a front row seat, to have listened to these two giants of the celestial world talking their points up? It would be like the ultimate courtroom drama, and then having to be a jurist making a decision one way or the other which way to go.
That's right.
I'm sure at some time in the future you'll be able to.
We'll
Look
replay
that
it.
up.
We'll replay it.
Yeah, I'm sure it will happen. I'm sure it will happen. And just what you're saying there was the next point I was going to make, that there was a war in heaven, and that
Was it a literal war like the Bible suggests? They talk about literal warfare, that like
no,
we will
I
consider
don't think it was a battle that they talk about there, don't they, with the angels and
sword play
swords
and parries and thrusting.
It wasn't a battle. It wasn't a war for people's physical lives or beings' lives. It was more a battle over eternal life, over
Okay.
eternal existence of each person.
So much
And-
more serious.
Yeah, much more serious.
Because in the reality, the flesh itself is transient. We do pass beyond this and
Sure.
move on to
That's right.
greener pastures and
Yeah.
cleaner
exactly-
shores.
Yep.
So really, that's not the important part. It's really what goes on that's more
Yeah.
important. That makes
Yeah.
sense. Okay.
Yeah. So each being, just as you're saying, was really forced to choose. And you could look at Gabriel versus Lucifer. Gabriel being a representative of Michael here.
Talking about an Archangel Gabriel
Archangel,
here. Yeah.
Archangel,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, right throughout the system, there would have been arguments 2 and 4, and there would have been one place where you could have gone and you could have actually seen, just as you've said, you could have seen Lucifer standing there on a soapbox saying, well, come to our side, this is what we've got to offer.
Yeah.
Gabriel, you could have gone over to Gabriel and listened to what he was saying. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So he was allowed to make his argument, and some
Yeah.
people chose his side. A lot of people, or a lot of beings,
A lot.
a lot, yeah.
chose his
Yeah,
side.
which we'll go into details as we go along.
Okay.
There's a lot to get through, I know, but
So many questions that
Oh.
come to my mind. I'm sorry, I'm biting my tongue. Go
yes,
ahead.
so, and now this all happened about 200,000 years ago, approximately 200,000 years ago.
About 200,000 was the Lucifer Rebellion.
That's our time.
Yep.
Like
That's our time.
That's our time, yeah. I know
Okay.
that's right, yeah. And I know that everyone would ask, well, why did Lucifer do it?
Yep.
You know,
That's one of the questions I have.
What's the big attraction that Lucifer has? Well, the best we can come up with was basically Lucifer fell in love with himself.
You mean ego?
It's an ego, pride.
It's
Yeah.
which we all have the capacity to succumb to. I'll just read this bit out, which I think it's really worth stating. To understand the Lucifer rebellion, it is necessary to understand liberty. Uncontrolled self-will and self-expression is pure selfishness, false liberty, and leads to unjust power over others. No one has the right to deny another the right to choose who to love or to worship.
This is a brilliant point. This is a very brilliant point, and this is so poignant considering the situation we live in today.
Absolutely.
And the remnants of the rebellion would appear to be alive and well on this little blue-green emerald planet of ours, just from the last comment you made, without discussing Urantia, without discussing religion, without discussing anything, this expression of free will that really does reign free, no pun intended, on this planet right now, is this man's... I would venture so far as to suggest the majority of people believe that it's quite possible and quite acceptable to live a life of complete free will, to do whatever you like, to do whatever you like whenever you please, almost a hedonistic, selfish expression of pleasure at any time, at any day, as long as it doesn't hurt anyone else or hinder anyone else's sense of self-gratification over there in that corner. But that doesn't work.
No.
It doesn't work, and this is a really important point. Like I said, above and beyond your answer or anything else, if the message in itself is strong enough, which I think it is, suggests that you cannot have free will flagrantly without responsibility. There has to be a sense of responsibility, and to act within a certain sense of responsibility. You cannot have hedonistic free will, go for it, whatever you like, whenever you like, because we live in an organism, or we're all part of this one globule where everything does affect everything else. Nothing cannot affect something else. A mother takes it upon herself. She doesn't want to be a mother to her 5-year-old. She takes it upon herself to go out night clubbing. She said, I'm not hurting anyone. I'm just fulfilling my sense of free will and self-gratification. I go and do that. I mean, that's to a thinking man is ludicrous, and it is, and it goes to show you cannot have free will without some responsibility. There's a bit of both, and if this bloke Lucifer really decided that, or was making the point that we could really have that free will, whatever we want, whenever we want it, because we were our own gods, it does seem to me to be a little bit insane. Ego and pride aside, any thinking person, I would imagine, even those lighted celestial beings who are apparently sitting in on these arguments, surely they could have made that argument to themselves, well, this guy's barking up the wrong tree, because surely he must realize, even if there isn't, his argument is correct, that there isn't an all-father and a highest possible spiritual being that's in control of everything. If we start doing what we want whenever we want, someone else is going to get affected.
I think a lot of the problem, and why so many people were seduced, I guess, by Lucifer, was that people couldn't really comprehend that someone so absolutely, I don't know what's the word, amazing and magnificent could actually go astray. And so they were seduced.
But these some of these other beings surely were quite high ups as well. They're fairly advanced in their own evolution spiritually, enough to maybe they just didn't see past this glowing robes that he was wearing. You know, he shone so brightly they couldn't see the wood for the trees of the hollowness of his argument. I mean, is that what you suggest?
They couldn't comprehend that someone so magnificent, I guess, as you said, could actually go astray. They just
could be so wrong.
Could be so wrong.
It's incredible story. And all right, so go on, Peter. Let's keep going. But it's an important point to make. This free will thing is at the heart of our problem right now.
Definitely.
And we were talking about this just before we came in, not from a ranch book point of view, but from it's
gone berserk. It's hedonism gone berserk.
Yes.
It really is.
Yep.
And it seems like there's a battle now. His lines being drawn
everywhere.
Yep.
Everywhere. This is very good. Great. Sorry, continue.
Okay, so really, why did it take so long to resolve? Well, that's an interesting point too. Why is it? It is still, when the Urantia book came out, we were still in isolation, this planet. We're still spiritually isolated. When we say spiritually isolated, we mean from a spiritual governmental point of view. As individuals, people still can have contact in various ways with God individually. People have had all sorts of experiences. We know from different teachings that there's a lot of wonderful things that are happening. But just now we're talking about as a global, as a world, in isolation now, because of the effects of the rebellion. So why did it take so long? Basically, one of the things which is pretty interesting is mercy takes time. Now, I will explain that. Now, when I say mercy, I mean every being that has decided to rebel and go against universal rule and has sided with Lucifer, God will give mercy to a person or a being if they repent and they think about what they've done as wrong. So basically, mercy requires that every wrongdoer has sufficient time to formulate a fully chosen attitude regarding his evil thoughts and sinful acts. So that always takes time.
At least a couple of 100,000 years, apparently.
Well, obviously. Now, another point is that Michael, as our creator and father, did not gain supreme authority over our universe until after he became immortal on our planet.
After he became amortal, or did you
Yes.
say immortal?
After he became
mortal.
after his mortal bestowal
Right.
on this planet.
Right. We did mention that, I think, as well the last time. We were mentioning the bestowal idea.
Yeah, I
That's
think
right.
we did.
That's part of his. He had to experience the life of all the different orders of his creatures in
Yeah.
order to achieve this sovereignty.
Well, it's a good idea. Upper management has to come and mix
right.
it with the lower management and the
So down,
the
go down
frontline
and
workers.
work,
Yeah.
on the floor.
a good one anyway.
And
So it makes
that's-
sense.
Yeah.
That's required of every creator son before they assume full authority over their creations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah. So basically, when he starts out with this universe and creating the universe, I mean, that was a long, long time ago. I mean, billions of years ago. He no doubt is a creator, but to actually achieve knowledge of being a creature, he has to incarnate. He has to actually be born as a child, and from that point of view, then he knows what it's like to be actually a creator and a creature. As it says in the Bible, he's the Son of Man and the Son of God, so he's got this dual nature now. So he understands our foibles, he understands our weaknesses, our strengths, our successes, and he can understand how we can be enticed from our small point of view about existence, how we can become seduced by Lucifer's arguments. And also, time is relative. Time on a material sphere is very different to time on a super universe level or the paradise level. 200,000 years of our time may not be a long time at all to them. And
Well, I would imagine that if our understanding of the nature of our reality was different, and we had at least the slightest inkling that for, in effect, reality, we did have an existence that lasted pretty much an eternity, I'm sure we'd be approaching our lives in a different way.
very much so, yeah.
But latest insurance statistics suggest that I won't be around for longer than 78, 79 years. So that's the time frame I've been given, and most of my companions on this planet have been given. So that's generally as much as we consider ourselves to stick around in.
That's a perspective as well, because if you think, well, you'll be here for 70 or 80 years, but if you're talking about life, that's a completely different thing, right? Because after you're finished here, your life continues. It's just somewhere else.
Man, you're preaching to the converted. But I would imagine that for the reality of our existence, most people would imagine this meat sack is all there is, and we'll only continue around for as long as we can keep the ticker ticking along. But I know what you mean. I understand completely. So no,
the meat suit is just a vehicle.
that's right, and it transforms.
Yes, very much so.
To a
All right.
flying one.
All right, I'll try and get through this quickly because I know we've got a lot of other work to do. Now, we're talking about what happened with the Lucifer Rebellion on a universe scale and a local system scale. I'd like to just say a little bit about what happened on Urantia.
Yeah, let's get
on our
specific.
planet. Right,
And
okay.
Urantia is the name of our planet.
Our planet, right. So the name of the book Urantia is also the name of this planet, given to this planet.
Yep.
Right.
Sure.
Okay.
That's what everybody who's not on Earth calls our planet, is Urantia.
Yep.
So
And a few on it as well. No.
Just a few.
yeah,
A small minority. Okay. Now, to speak about the Lucifer Rebellion, we have to go back a little bit in time. We have to go back to 500,000 years ago. Humankind has been around for 1 million years, give or take a few years.
Mm-hmm.
And primitive man slowly evolved biologically for 500,000 years. And at that stage, we got a spiritual government that arrived on this planet. And every mortal inhabited planet at some stage in its evolutionary time scale gets a spiritual government comes along.
Usually what triggers that is the emergence of will in primitive man.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say will, that's will is the ability to choose the will of God and to worship God.
Are you talking about a thought adjuster?
No.
Okay,
No.
so there's a difference between
This
will
is-
and a
this
thought
is
adjuster.
very, very primitive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will to make decisions of your own. Is that kind of
The
what you're
will
talking
to
about?
choose between, well, good and evil, I suppose, in some ways.
Yeah, just altruistic ideas. And,
The ability to choose the path of eternal survival.
Okay.
Let's say that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when that comes out, when that's evident in primitive man, that usually triggers the planetary government coming down.
Okay.
So a planetary government arrives on our planet, and it consists of what we call a planetary prince, who is like a local administrator for the planet. He's in charge of the government that's here.
You're not talking about the Labor government.
No, I can't really relate.
They're not a
anyway.
spiritual
No,
government,
no,
are they?
no, that's-
Okay.
no,
We're
no.
talking about if you can,
Yeah.
when you talk about a government, a spiritual governing body.
Yes.
This is not actually not necessarily what we would imagine materialized beings who inhabit bodies that sit in a building with marble floors.
Okay, well,
Actually,
that's
that was part of it.
yes.
That was part of
There's
it.
There's two parts to these governments.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. There's two
Sorry.
parts. Okay.
Yeah.
This planetary prince, the head of the government, is invisible. Okay.
To us.
To us, to mortals, and also he has an entourage of many helpers, as well as other individual beings that come along to the planet. There is a staff of volunteers of 100 celestial individuals,
Okay.
50 female and 50 male,
Okay.
and they volunteer to come along. And what happens is they are repersonalised on the planet. Now, it's by a method we're not sure of. We don't really understand it, but each one of the staff that becomes visible on the planet they take the life plasm of a volunteer from the evolutionary races, and by some manipulative system they repersonalise each person. So there's 50 males and 50 females, which for all intents and purposes are very similar to human beings.
Mm-hmm.
They eat, sleep, drink. They eat, sleep, drink, and they, as well as having a physical body, they also have a divine nature as well.
Okay.
So they have a dual nature.
Okay.
So they're special bodies, just
Yep.
not completely human.
Yeah, not completely human. They do have a human element, but they also have a divine element.
Okay.
So they're like nothing else that really has existed before that time. At the same time, they are immortal.
Right.
And the way that they remain immortal is because of what they call the tree of life. And they eat.
Oh, we've heard of that one.
We have indeed.
Okay.
It's all part of our heritage.
Mm-hmm.
Along with the staff that come along to the planet, they bring along from the spiritual realms a tree of life. And that tree of life gets...
It's a real tree,
It's a real tree.
like
And
leaves and
Yep,
branches.
Yep, and fruit.
Okay.
Yep.
Fruit.
Yep.
Fruit, apples.
Well, I don't know.
Special fruit.
I don't think they bring a snake along. I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay.
So what happens is with this planetary government is 500,000 years ago they set up headquarters near the headwaters of the Persian Gulf. They made a city there. And
Gulf of Eden, is that?
No.
no, yeah,
Gulf
I'm not
of Eden.
sure.
Sorry,
and,
go on.
and their objective was to uplift humanity, and they did this with these 100 staff. They divided them up into 10 councils.
Okay.
And they were able to take. They didn't teach the local tribes and nations by sending out missionaries, but they actually took the best of the young people from, I'm not say young, but took the best of the various tribes and brought them back to the city and trained them and then sent them back again. So it was a slow evolutionary process.
So these were actually physical, material, human being-like
The
beings
100 were.
that come to the planet. The planet evolved to a certain point with the evolving species on the planet, and at an acceptable time, when it's decided that it's time for them to have government, the government takes its place, the volunteers come along, and these guys will actually hit the ground. They'll go in amongst the people or the beings or the evolving races, and they'll choose the best of the best from those tribes and collections of humanity or whatever, and they train them.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah,
they get their
basically.
hands dirty. It's not just like some spiritual
No.
metaphysical,
It's very-
esoteric
very much
government.
giving them the
Hands-on.
rudimentary tools of civilization.
Yeah.
Okay.
What will become civilization. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, well, that's
Yeah.
very kind of them. Okay, great. So they go ahead and do this.
Well, so some of the topics that they were teaching the people were to do with the actual councils, and there was a council for material welfare, another one for conquest of predatory animals, another one for industry and trade, conservation of knowledge, health and life, art and science. So these things were pretty advanced. You know, I mean, we're talking 500,000 years ago. So this is you know, way beyond anything we've heard before, way earlier, and this continued on for 300,000 years. And on a normal planet, that's how we would progress.
Okay.
From that time on, from the time of the prince and his staff coming along, as well as the evolutionary ideas of humanity, you would also have, alongside that, you would have the revelation of truth. So
Religion and spirituality.
yeah. So it would be a combined effort.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We're moving along here. Now we're coming out to the end of the hour here for the first hour. We've already gone through this, but is it okay if I just got to do a quick ad break, and then we'll come straight back. I don't mean to interrupt. This is getting interesting.
You bet.
But let me just do this, folks. Well, you're listening to The Source, Radio Fremantle, 107.9 FM. Benjamin with you. My special guests here tonight, Peter Webb and Derek Grimm. We're going to just take a very quick ad break, and we'll be back. We're continuing on with the history of, the planet itself and the races and cosmology and the celestials and everything that you didn't realize you didn't know about what's going on with this planet. So do stay tuned. We'll be back in just a moment. Tonight, two gentlemen with me, Peter Webb and Derek Grimm, from the, a little association here in Perth. There's a few around the world, but these blokes are part of the one in Perth that deal with this very important book, very special writing, again called the Urantia. That's Urantia. Very easy to get your hands on, even if you do a basic Google search. I know I got my own Urantia book and also the Portuguese version from my lovely lady wife. From the Amazon website, for one example, but it is available locally as well as internationally. It's not hard to get your hands on. Any of this information intriguing to you, feel free to go out there, and it's not actually very expensive at all. Or you can contact us here at the radio station, Source 107.9 FM at hotmail.com. Call in the radio 9494 2100. Technically, just probably the email's the easiest one to get us on. But don't forget, this radio program is being archived. You will be able to listen to this on the recording later on. So if you miss any of the information or you want to listen to it again, you can do so at your convenience for the next 7 days. All right, we're back, folks. Gentlemen, let's do this again. Sorry, Peter, we were continuing on about the specific history of this particular planet, or at least the layout of how it normally works when a planet is formed, seeded, and the evolution of life begins its process. Now, I understand that for the most part that's fairly accurate across the board. With new planets, they're done the same way. They have the manual, the operating procedure, and they just go ahead with each one. And also, I was under the impression that we won't need to really go into this, but there's an experimental. There's decimal planets, as Urantia was. So in this context, normally, if you want to try something a little bit different on these decimal planets, they will do that, and they'll try something a little bit different, create a whole race of mohawked individuals with sideburns and such, if they thought that was necessary. And Urantia was one of those. Now, I would imagine so far you've been taking us from the history from 500,000 years ago. We've now breached, I think, 300,000 or 200,000 years into the process. But it starts to go a little awry, I imagine, for us.
It does, yeah.
With this rebellion and some such here in the local system, it starts to get messy. So please continue.
Yes, 200,000 years ago things did change. Now, Lucifer, 200,000 years ago, before the rebellion started, Lucifer sent one of his lieutenants out on a bit of a mission into the system, and his assistant was Satan. Now,
I think we're all quite familiar with that one. Well, yeah, even if you're not a Catholic.
Yeah, that's right.
It's pretty used. Satan. So is it this bloke's lieutenant's name was Satan?
That's right. I know there's an issue with some people saying Lucifer and Satan are the same people, but they're actually very different.
Okay, so all right, great. So continue. Yep. Satan was sent on a mission.
So Satan actually arrived on our planet, and he talked to the planetary prince here. And what he was trying to do was garner the support of the planetary prince for the rebellion.
Oh, geez. So the recruiting.
Yeah, he was recruiting. Yeah, he was off on a mission, and he was he was on behalf of Lucifer. So he was going around the different
I don't
planets.
think you mentioned. Sorry if you have, but did you mention what was the actual name of our planetary prince at that time?
Well, it's Caligastia.
Caligastia. I'm sorry if you mentioned that before.
No, I didn't. I specifically didn't want to get. We didn't want to
naming
get
names.
Sorry,
it
could get quite confusing, but no, it's Caligastia. Yep. So once the rebellion was declared, and we would have heard here on the planet through the spiritual broadcasts of the networks through the. No, we didn't. No, what?
Well, the system was severed.
No. Before, at the outbreak of the rebellion, at the outbreak of the rebellion, we would have got the message here that there was Lucifer was declaring a freedom.
Gee, that would have been scary.
Well, it would have been, and when that happened, the planetary prince Caligastia went to his staff, and he had a chat with them, and he said, "I now declare myself God of Urantia."
So he switched
sides. He was putting himself above Michael and the Universal Father. And the staff, which is the 100 staff, are forced to choose sides. And as a consequence of this, 60 staff, under the leadership of, who was it? Nod, rebelled, and they went to support the Caligastia, the planetary prince.
Jeez.
40 of the 100 supported Michael, and they chose Van as their leader.
Van,
yeah, V-A-N. And Nod and Van were both in the councils. Van was the leader of was in the Tribal Coordination and Racial Cooperation Council, and Nod was in the Commission of Industry and Trade. That's just by the way. Okay, and what happened was, obviously they couldn't all live in the city together.
I was going to say, would they have fought? Did they fight, or was it just more of a disagreement? This is your side, and this is our side?
I don't know. How do you imagine it? I just imagine it to be that they just thought, well, right, that's the end of how we are now.
I don't really imagine it as violent so much as.
I think for the most part they would understand, being at least somewhat higher up in the celestial hierarchy, the pointlessness of destroying the physical body, in that they realised they would continue on anyway. So maybe it was a moot point. We're not going to decapitate each other because we realise that we'll continue on anyway. So they're probably above and beyond that, more baser, not like us.
I'm sure they would have reacted quite differently to us.
Lop heads. No, that makes sense.
Well, according to the book, Van and his followers, his loyal followers, they left the city, and they wandered around for a while. They took the Tree of Life with them,
Oh, they took it.
They took it, yep. And they ended up in Turkey, in a region of Turkey. And today there's a Lake Van
Oh, really?
in Turkey, which is named
Wow.
after,
It's just sort of on the southwest corner of the Caspian Sea.
Coincidental?
Well, that's where he set up his headquarters.
Mm.
But come on, then they call it Lake
They call
Van.
it Lake Van,
Van,
and the area around there used to be known as the Kingdom of Van.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's on any map, you can see it there.
And, and that name apparently is so old that nobody knows where it's come from.
Wow.
So
Mm.
pretty
Intriguing.
Cool, pretty cool
Mm.
stuff.
Yeah.
So the rebellion took place. Caligastia chose sides. He took the majority of the peoples with him, or the coordinators with him.
Yep.
And the others went wandering the wilderness.
They did, until they ended up in Turkey. Now, this point now is a very, very interesting point, and Derek will expand on this. But what happened with the rebel staff, the 60, under Nod, Caligastia, the planetary prince, realised that the rebel staff were no longer immortal. They didn't have the tree of life.
Oh, that's true. The
So
tree
they were
was
gonna-
taken away.
Yeah, they're going to die. That's it, end of story, unless they start multiplying. And he ordered them to start procreating.
Get busy.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So they're still around the Persian Gulf, around the headwaters of the Persian Gulf, around the city. They're multiplying. And eventually, the population got to such a point, and the internal pressures amongst the people there, they just split up. And the descendants of the rebel staff are what we now call the Nodites, or the Nodites.
Mm.
You've
Yeah.
heard, yep. Okay.
That's Urantia terminology. That's
Yeah.
not
No, it's
historical.
not. No.
Yeah.
Okay. So, right. But Caligastia, was he a physical expression as well? Was he in a material...
No,
he
he
couldn't
would.
see Caligastia.
No,
so
he's...
The staff could, but we
the
couldn't.
actual the head of the rebel staff, I guess, could actually, in terms of physical body and being able to see, would have been Nod.
Okay.
Yeah.
He would have been the actual physical, visible leader.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And,
All right.
And at that point, they split up. They just moved away because of the population pressures, probably not enough food.
It's interesting how they did split up, though. They actually split up into three, almost four groups.
Mm-hmm.
And one group remained in the general area of the old city, near the headwaters of the Persian Gulf. Another group relocated to the east, which is the biblical land of Nod,
Mm-hmm.
which is east of Eden.
Mm-hmm.
And a third group relocated west to the area of what is now Syria.
Okay.
And these groupings correspond to some of the oldest urban centers on the archaeological record. Elba in Syria is an unbelievably old city. Eridu in southern Samaria. Susa in Elam, which is the eastern east of Eden area. And Nineveh in northern Mesopotamia.
Wow.
So we'll be
Okay.
getting into that a little bit later.
All right.
Yeah, hopefully.
Okay.
Okay. Well,
What about Van and his little band of holdouts? That's what I want to hear about. They
Mhm.
stole the tree, so they have some longevity.
well, you might have a bit more to say about that. You just want? I've got a little bit to conclude,
Yeah,
and then
go
I'll.
ahead.
Yeah,
I'll
go
finish
ahead,
that.
Peter. Yeah, do it.
Well, virtually 300 years of advancement in civilization was all but wiped out within 10,000 years.
300,000 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So
What-
from the time that the prince and his staff arrived, evolution was going along normally on a normal planet, and then bang, it was all just wiped out within a very short time. And the traditions of the prince and his staff were really only maintained and passed on by small groups of people, including the Nodites and Van's group.
What a mess up. What a stuff up.
It's
So
yeah.
300,000 years of progress just gone. Gone in pretty much a flash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is Lucifer's idea of
Freedom.
free will and liberty.
Yeah.
So this is what happens when we just choose to.
Okay, so the normal track and progression of evolution that was to take place was reversed through the rebellion, and Caligastia choosing sides. He picked the wrong side. His followers, workers, the ones who would administrate for him in his stead, lost their ability to continue to live the amount of time required to do what is normally required of them.
Yep.
So the whole thing went to hell in a handbasket, literally. Godless purgatory, literally and figuratively. And what about Van? I mean, I'm just trying to imagine this guy who's
Sure.
still under the well, he chose to continue on in the service of the one he calls the Michael Son, and he continued to work towards the goals of the Michael Son for this planet.
Absolutely, it's a fascinating story. It's one of the untold stories that
Sounds like a bit of a hero, this guy.
He's
is.
unbelievable.
He's incredible.
Yeah.
Did you have
He was the guy who held it all together for over 150,000 years after that.
Gotta love that tree of life.
It's very, very helpful.
Yeah.
So he continued to try to do the job they would have normally done, except without the resources they had.
I don't know how successful he was at actually continuing what they were trying to do. He did set up a center of higher civilization up in the area of Lake Van that we talked about already. And yeah, I don't think there really was a lot of progress really,
But he
except
kept
around that area. But he kept the light of civilization burning.
he kept contact with the spiritual government, didn't he?
And the spiritual government through him was direct contact with
Oh, there
the
was.
evolutionary races because he was physical and visible.
Okay,
And he obviously could see the supermaterial part of the government,
right.
and the evolutionary races on Earth could see him, so there was the direct contact.
Terrific. He was
So
an intermediary of
All
sorts.
of that was still very functional.
Okay.
Yeah. So he basically maintained all of this for 150,000 years after the outbreak of the rebellion up near Lake Van. And now basically after 150,000 years we come to the story of Adam and Eve.
Oh, we're only now getting to Adam and Eve.
Adam and Eve.
How many hundreds of thousands of years later? Okay, right.
No,
Well, it's such an incredible story before Adam and Eve, and we know
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So the Lucifer rebellion happened 200,000 years ago. Van maintained the status quo for about 150,000 years. And Adam and Eve showed up here approximately 37,000 years ago.
Give or take. That's pretty precise numbers.
Well,
And
they
in-
actually give the actual to the year date in the Urantia book,
Oh, okay.
going back from 1935. But
Well, 37,000 is pretty
37 's
accurate for me.
pretty
We'll
accurate,
work with
yeah.
that for
it's
now.
pretty good, yeah. So the purpose of Adam and Eve is a lot different than most people figure if you're reading Genesis.
Yeah, that's obviously a lot of history in the Bible on that one.
We talked about a certain stage of evolution triggering the arrival of the planetary prince
Mm-hmm.
and his staff. The same sort of thing happens with Adam and Eve. Even though our spiritual and intellectual progress was unbelievably retarded by what happened with the rebellion, our physical or biological evolution wasn't hindered at all. It continued on as normal, obviously. So once primitive man reaches a certain limit of evolutionary development, that triggers the arrival of an Adam and Eve. Okay, and Adam and Eve is a specific order of divine being. They're actually called material sons and daughters. And they have really a twofold purpose when they come to a planet. The primary purpose is to create a superior race of beings on the planet after its population has grown to a specific size. Then they selectively blend it with the indigenous races on the planet In this way, they uplift the biologic evolution, which is, well, I don't know if you want to say stagnated, but it's reached a point where there's a limit.
Okay, so it's hit its ceiling.
Yeah.
So,
And this allows it to go through that ceiling.
so despite this rebellion and this cutoff in the circuitry and all the things that have gone wrong, they did reach a point where the Adam and Eve mission was launched, and they allowed the Adam and Eve mission to go on as usual.
Because the trigger is physical or biologic evolution,
Okay, fine.
right?
Yeah.
And their secondary purpose is also to inaugurate a more detailed revelation of God and the universe to the inhabitants of a planet. So it's another epical revelation.
Okay.
So I guess another one of their purposes in our case was to try and repair all of the damage of the rebellion on our planet. And
It's a big job.
Start
Yeah.
trying to build the civilization up again.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not usually what they're supposed to do, but in our case, that's what our Adam and Eve were required to do.
Okay.
So these material sons and daughters, as I've been referring to them, whenever they come to a planet, that they're usually referred to as Adam and Eve, and that's why we call them Adam and Eve.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, of course.
Now we come to something really interesting. I'm going to read a direct quote because it's pretty cool.
Okay.
Material sons and daughters vary in height from 8 to 10 feet, and their bodies glow with the brilliance of radiant light of a violet color. While they have material bodies, they are also charged with divine energy and saturated with celestial light. So they have special bodies as well, similar in some ways to the staff of the planetary prince, but different in others because of they're coming here to create a race and uplift us biologically. So we in the Urantia book call them the violet race because they actually radiate, they glow a violet color,
Right.
which is pretty weird.
Yeah.
But that's actually the source of
And 8 to 10 feet.
Yeah.
Okay. Decent size. Good basketball team right there.
You know it. That's the source of our near universal custom of showing divine or holy beings with halos.
Right. Well, it makes sense. Yeah, of course. That
Because
does make sense.
when they're wearing clothes, basically the light comes out from their neck, and it looks almost like a halo, and that's where we get that tradition from.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, I love those little by the ways. It's just
Yeah. The by the ways, the stories in themselves, but we can't go there, unfortunately. So continue on, Adam and Eve.
Knowing that the Adam and Eves always live in a garden setting, Van.
They do live in a garden setting as well, so
Yes,
it's
they
kind
do.
of like, okay,
Yeah, so we're getting
there's
to the garden.
similarities. Okay.
Van actually spent a few hundred years before they came actually looking for and creating a site for them to turn into the Garden of Eden, and set up their new headquarters,
Their
I guess
digs.
you could call. Yeah, their new digs. He put the tree of life there. He transplanted the tree of life because Adam and Eve needed that for their immortality. The Urantia book states that the location of this garden was on a long, narrow peninsula extending westward into the eastern Mediterranean. And that's all they say.
Okay.
But recent investigations based on this information by very interested Urantia book students suggest that it's most likely the submerged area off of what is now the Cyprus's southeast coast
Okay.
is the most likely candidate for where this garden was.
Well, it's beautiful this time of year, I hear.
Cyprus?
Yeah.
I actually lived in Cyprus for 6
Oh,
months.
yeah?
It's quite a place. Yeah.
Quite nice.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
good. You didn't see any violet people walking around, did you?
No.
No, 8 to 10 foot tall.
They're not really around anymore.
No.
But we'll get into why.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve, basically, once the garden was created, Van left once they'd arrived, and they were on their own. And
But he left the tree with them.
yes, he did.
I feel bad for this Van guy. Well, how did he go on?
Van was here for what, 500,000 years he was here for 450,000 years. That's a pretty long
Okay, that's a
pretty long
hefty
tour of duty.
doing your time. But after the tree, he gave the tree, so he didn't have the tree anymore. How did he go on? I'm sorry,
He
this is
didn't-
not his
he-
story
he-
anymore. I
he-
just feel bad for the bloke.
He returned back to.
He got to go back.
He got to go back.
He made it.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't realize he made it. I'm just happy to hear this guy made it. After all this hard work, he got to go home
He's
at the
back.
end.
He's somewhere up there doing great and powerful things now. I'm sure
He would have got a recommendation of some kind for
Yeah,
that.
he's
A few
he's
patches,
one
few
of the-
stars on the cloak for that one.
One of the well-known heroes of the rebellion.
Okay, I'll leave it. I'm happy now. I can go on. Adam and Eve,
Go.
go ahead. Did they have a pet, by the way? Little snake? So, no.
No snakes.
No snakes. Okay, I don't like
Sorry,
snakes.
hate to
Okay,
disappoint.
okay.
They had been laboring in this new garden for about 100 years, trying to influence the surrounding tribes, much as Caligastia's staff had done.
They didn't have staff. It was just Adam and Eve. One guy, one girl.
Adam and Eve, but they, as time went on, they influenced neighboring tribes who came in and started working with them. They also had Van's crew of people as well.
Oh, they stuck around as well.
Well, there was Nodites that eventually changed their mind over the centuries and stuff and came over to support Van and his group. So there was a large group of
Oh,
people.
okay. So no, by
Yeah.
themselves. Sounds
So
like a hard
they
work.
weren't by themselves. No.
Okay.
And they would have had their children as well.
And that's right. Adam and Eve started, creating the violet race.
So they
So
did.
they started having children as fast as they could, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because their goal was to create a massive.
What a job.
Yeah. Well, that's what their function was.
Right.
To create this new race that they could blend with the peoples of Earth. So
Okay.
yeah. So they'd met with a little bit of success, but things were pretty frustrating on a planet like this. And Caligastia was always hanging around bugging Adam to try and come over to his way of doing things, but Adam wouldn't budge. So Caligastia got a little bit frustrated and decided to try an indirect approach and target Eve.
Okay. I don't
We-
like
we
where this
can-
is going.
We can see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Over time in the garden, a close working relationship had begun to grow between Eve and one of Adam's trusted lieutenants,
Uh-oh.
who was also the leader of the Syrian Nodites in the area. Both this leader and Eve were very frustrated by how little progress they had made with the tribes outside of the immediate vicinity of the garden, and they both wanted to see more immediate results. So the Nodite leader one day suggests to Eve that if the Nodites, as the most progressive and cooperative race, could have a leader born to them of part origin with this violet race, it would constitute a very powerful tie binding these peoples more closely to the garden and help spread the word a lot more quickly.
Right.
He was totally sincere in this and had no idea that he was playing into Caligastia's little plot. Eve eventually was brought around to this plan. It took a long time, but she was eventually convinced that this would be a good idea and consented to bear the child of the spiritual leader of the neighboring Nodite tribes. This man was named Kano, and their offspring of that union was Cain, who I'm sure everybody knows that name, Cain.
Mm.
Okay? The problem with what had been done here is that the divine plan for the Adams and Eves is to amass a huge number of their race before attempting to blend with the indigenous races on the planet,
Which they hadn't done.
which they hadn't. They'd only been there 100 years. I mean, we're talking about millions of people needed to
Violet race
yes,
before.
Yeah.
How did she expect to do that in 100 years?
They were impatient.
Oh, come on. Oh, that's...
They're impatient and frustrated, and things weren't going well. They were on an isolated planet. It was just, I mean, you can't blame them. I mean, it's an absolute tragedy, but
Well,
Yeah.
they were isolated. They didn't have any.
But Van's been doing what he was doing for 500,000. She couldn't wait a couple of thousand years. I don't know.
His primary purpose was completely different from theirs, though.
Yeah, but she had to spawn a race of millions. I mean, she couldn't expect to get that kind of thing done in 100.
Yeah, but when you think of it that way, I mean, just having one extra here to help things along a little bit faster.
But it
really
wasn't
does
pure. It wasn't part of the
Exactly.
plan.
Exactly,
Oh my
and
gosh.
that's the problem.
Yes.
Okay.
This plan was supposed to take several generations to achieve, and they were both warned that there could be no deviation from this plan before they even set foot on the planet. But it happened, and on hearing that Eve had done this, Adam went and sought out a Nodite woman and committed the same folly.
Jealous rage.
No, it was not. And that is very clearly described in the Urantia book. It was not a jealous rage. It was not done out of spite, anger, revenge, or anything like that. He did it because he loved Eve wholeheartedly and deliberately chose to share in her punishment. Because the material sons and daughters, they're together. They were together for probably millions of years before they even came to our planet. And he couldn't bear to spend the ensuing millennia without her on this planet by himself. He just couldn't bear it. So he purposely went out and slept with a Nodite woman, and in that way he's going to share her fate.
Oh, this is like
So-
this is the days of our lives. This
It's
is just,
it's almost a Romeo and Juliet.
yeah,
It's amazing.
yeah.
Now some huge problems happen. When the garden inhabitants heard what happened, they were absolutely infuriated, and they swept out through the gates of Eden and down upon the Nodite tribes and utterly destroyed them. Not a man, woman, or child was spared.
What?
Absolutely, yeah.
Hang on. So these are the
These are the
former administrators of Van, and also the ones that had come before the Nodites, the ones who
were working in the garden. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
and they went out and
They
just
were absolutely infuriated.
we're talking
at what
physical
happened.
slaughter now. They just
Yeah. We're talking war.
wiped them out.
War on a planetary scale of violence and swords and...
Gee, it's going downhill again.
Yeah.
I thought it was looking
Yeah.
up, and now it's going down again.
Well, this is why this story is so important, because it's explaining why we're so messed up. Okay.
Speak for yourself.
I'm talking as a human family.
yeah, I'm just playing.
So they destroyed these tribes, but the other Nodite tribes in the area, hearing about this massacre, began to gather an army to march on the garden.
Oh no. Okay.
So when Adam heard this, he decided to vacate the garden because he's not going to fight in a war.
No.
He's a spiritual being. He's above that. They left the garden, bound for an area between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in Mesopotamia, in what would become Mesopotamia. It wasn't Mesopotamia at that time. And it was here they established the second Garden of Eden. And it is this garden which is referred to in the Bible and all the other records.
So they
when
thought
you-
they'd
when
just
you hear-
move and get out of harm's way, and
That's right. They said, okay, we're out of the garden. They can have it. We have to move.
they take the
So-
tree.
They did not take the tree.
They didn't take the tree.
They couldn't take the tree. Yeah. Their transgression, their default, as it's termed, it was not deemed a rebellion, such as Caligastia had done. Rather, it was more of an error of judgment, or a default of the divine plan, right?
Yeah.
Adam and Eve were degraded in status to that of mortals and were no longer permitted to use the tree of life to extend their time on earth.
That seems
So-
kind of similar to the
so-
story we're more familiar with. They got chucked out of the garden,
there's
so to
elements,
speak.
isn't there? There are elements, but
Well, it's allegory, but
Yeah.
it's it's similar.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, but there's a lot more to it than just eating an apple.
Yeah, it's true. Well,
Yeah.
they had to condense it. They had to.
So after becoming established in this second garden, Adam decided to leave behind as many members of the violet race as possible to try and, make up for what they had done, because he knew he wasn't going to be around for that long. And this resulted in the addition of another 1,500 men and women who were able to contribute to this newly growing violet race.
Okay.
Okay. So Adam lived for 530 years. He died of what might be termed old age. His body just wore out. I mean, after 530 years.
And that's a lot of sex. No, if I can put it like that, that's wear anyone out.
There's more to it than that, but yeah, I'm sure. Eve had actually died 19 years previously of a weakened heart.
Gee.
Okay. They were both buried in the center of the Temple of Divine Service in the second garden. And this was the origin of the practice of burying noted and pious men and women under the floors of places of worship.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where that comes from.
Wow.
That's
Okay.
Another one of those by the ways.
By the ways,
really
as an
cool.
aside,
Yes. Yeah. They did, however, leave great culture on Earth, but because of such few numbers, it wasn't possible for the plan to proceed as everyone was hoping.
Right.
And the violet race was eventually submerged and blended completely into the indigenous evolutionary races.
Okay. All right.
And the reason is because it's the people who make a civilization. It's not the civilization who make the people. So their civilization was, for all intents and purposes, kind of artificial. In a way.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's an important point as well. Yeah. Make of the man.
So another thing not very good thing that happened due to this is, since the death of Adam, there's been no actual direct physical contact between Urantia's supermaterial government and the evolutionary races on a global scale.
Right.
So that connection's been cut, severed, as well, which is really bad.
Yeah.
So that's the story. Adam and Eve and the Lucifer rebellion.
Well, there we go. It's
So-
not exactly what I was aware of through other texts and sources, but it's definitely more of a colorful story, I'll tell you that much.
And it's the account in the Urantia book is significantly more detailed than what we've just described.
Yeah, as I can imagine, but it's all available there as anyone can get their hands on, so pick it out, folks, and have a look.
So now, as we mentioned before, if we have enough time, I'd like to maybe talk a little bit about how science and scholarship is kind of catching up to this story.
Let's do it.
All right. So I guess now we sort of come to the Sumerians.
Okay, have we skipped a few 100,000 years, or where are we now?
The Sumerians are usually dated to about 3,500 BC.
Mm-hmm.
So we've skipped a little bit ahead.
Okay, that's
But,
fine. Fast forward.
Basically, in the Urantia book, it talks about how all of the races, the Nodites and the indigenous races and the violet race, blended and became a new race and then dispersed all over the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's actually a fascinating story, but it's a trackable story
Okay.
using genetics and things like that. So.
Okay.
These Sumerians are actually the last direct descendants of this new race. And they are a direct connection to this new race and the older races of the violet race and the Nodites and stuff. They're the last direct descendants
link.
of these people.
Okay.
And that's why the archaeologists and historians are so baffled by the Sumerians. Because they appear at the so-called dawn of our civilization with a fully advanced culture already functioning. And nobody can figure out how it happened. But I think now we have a pretty good idea how it happened.
You know, as a very small side, I'm so sorry,
Yeah.
but it just popped into my mind. I was made aware recently of an African megalopolis. I don't know if that's how megapolis.
I've heard of that too.
Did you hear about that recently?
Yeah.
They're suggesting it's somewhere between 9 and 10,000 years BC.
That's right, yeah.
an African city of such proportion as to really go against the grain of most recorded and acceptable scientific theory about time frames that long ago,
right.
as to be possible to exist.
Yeah.
This is very, very... Have you heard of this one, Peter? I'll try and get the link. I'll send you the blokes this one. But it ties in well, especially there's links here that fit within the chain of the story of our evolution and the story and history of this planet. There's links that don't fit so well. And what has been seeming to have been happening for the longest time is when a link doesn't fit to the accepted theory or story of the day, the link is discarded.
That's right.
It's not attempted for that link to somehow make it fit. If it doesn't fit, we discard it. Why? It doesn't fit into any selected theory. And this idea, again, is indicative of a mindset that really proliferates all through our current society, in all forms of science, in forms of politics and government, all these things. If it doesn't fit within an accepted paradigm, we discard it because we can't discover where to put it. The strands of our DNA, there's all this junk DNA that suggests that it's junk. Why? Because we don't know what it does. Therefore, it has no purpose. Just because you don't understand doesn't mean there's no purpose behind it.
That's right.
And it does seem ludicrous to me to suggest that we are all-knowing and all omniscient, omnipresent, and able to see all, that we don't need to learn anything. It boggles my mind. But I just thought of that idea. I hope to hear more about this African city, because it really does blow apart more wide holes in accepted theory and ideas about our true history.
They've found other places that are pushing the timeline back as well. Like in Turkey, they've found a place called Göbekli Tepe.
You're talking about the pyramids?
No, those aren't.
That's Bosnia or some such. They discovered some pyramids there.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
But it's absolutely fascinating how all of these recent discoveries are just pushing the timeline further and further and further back, and starting more and more and more to support this story that I've just told.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
It's pretty cool. Yeah.
So
these Sumerians just had this absolutely amazing culture. You know, I mean, they had metalwork, they had agriculture, domesticated animals, pottery, weaving, civil codes, religious ceremony. They had writing. They had all of this stuff.
kind of like the Big Bang Theory, right? They just appeared out of nowhere with everything.
Yeah.
Just works.
They had base 10 math. And
base 10. They were working with base 10 math.
Yes, except for astronomy and time, which was base 60, which is what we use.
Wow. Okay.
And, you know, all of that was fully advanced culture at the dawn of our civilization.
Poof.
Nobody can
Click.
figure out why.
Poof. It's magic.
But we, as Urantia book readers,
Urantians.
that's right. We know the Sumerians as Andites. That's the term that Urantia book gives this race.
Okay.
And they're the race, as I said, blended from the fallen prince's staff, the Nodites, Adam and Eve's violet race, and the indigenous humans.
As close to blue bloods as we can possibly get on this planet.
Yeah.
Or violet blood, as you could call it.
And the Urantia book, although we can't get into it today, really, really closely follows how these races blended and then dispersed all over the planet and where they went and how.
So people can read about all of this
it's
stuff in great detail.
absolutely fascinating story.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's really cool. Yeah. So if we're looking at the story as we are now from the human perspective, as opposed to the Urantia book is more from a universal perspective, it's kind of fascinating exercise to look at all of the mysteries and records of our past, kind of like what you were just talking about, the African city, right? I mean, everywhere you look, when you know this story, you get these connections. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, if you even in mythology, if you look at the Egyptian, Greek, Roman, and even the Norse pantheons of gods, and then you think about Caligastia's staff of 100. There's just amazing similarities there, and we won't even go into the non-Western cultures, which even have more similarities.
Yeah.
I mean, each staff member of Caligastia's staff worked towards a very specific goal in terms of helping advance civilization. Each was associated with their groups or council, and this is very clearly reflected in how the gods in these cultures are portrayed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Gods of fertility and
you've got-
agriculture,
that's
gods
right.
of
You've
war
got
and
this- and the god of war isn't just the god of war. He also has associated with him sort of a related industry and skill as well.
Mhm.
It's like the god of war would also be the god of metalwork and that
smithing
sort of stuff,
and right.
And that can be like directly related to Caligastia's staff and the dawn of our civilization, and how, you know, it's kind of, the Sumerians called civilization a gift from the gods. And there it is right there, you know.
Mm.
It's also interesting to look at the Arthurian legend, the legend of King Arthur, in the light of the story of Adam and Eve that we just told. You've got Arthur, or Adam, establishing a new kingdom, which is Camelot or Eden, based on divine principles. You've got Guinevere or Eve sleeping with Lancelot, or the Nodite leader, precipitating a default.
Mm.
You've got Arthur, or Adam, is forced to go out and try and regain what is lost. In Arthur's case, it would be the Holy Grail. And in Adam's case, it's making up for the default and trying to get as much of the violet race out there as possible. I mean, you could make arguments that you could equating Merlin with Van, I guess, because Van set up Adam.
Mm-hmm.
You could also have arguments equating Morgana with Caligastia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. No, there's connections everywhere.
It's absolutely amazing when you look at it in the light of this Urantian history. All these connections, it's just amazing. So it is entirely possible, I guess, that the Arthurian legend is based on a very much older legend. I'm not saying that it is, but it's definitely closer to the real story of Adam and Eve than the account we read today in Genesis is. Just something to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah. But these stories, you know, by most scientists, like you were saying, are dismissed because they're myths. Yeah. But something that I like to think about is one guy who took what was believed to be the myth of the Trojan War and used all of the information in Homer's account to actually find and excavate the city of Troy. That's how he found Troy, was using the description of Troy and where it was in Homer's description, and he found Troy.
You actually found it.
Yeah, his name was Heinrich Schliemann. Now, that was probably back in the late 1800s, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
mind-boggling. There's
that-
too much to discover with this stuff.
That's what happens when you take myth almost literally, you know?
Mm.
So there's I think people are going to have to start looking at so-called myth a lot more closely. Yeah,
Chase up some links there.
that's right. So, I mean, there's surviving written accounts as well, not just in the myth. I mean, even in the Bible, in Genesis, which, you know, I really don't want to quote Genesis, but I'm going to.
Go on, do it.
Genesis chapter 6, it reads, when men began to increase in number on the earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they married any of them that they chose. The Nephilim were on earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God went to the daughters of men and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, the men of renown.
Yeah, I have. There's been a few different takes from different sources as to the source of the Nephilim, and
right.
I assume you're going to tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we are getting into the Nephilim now, aren't we? Yeah. And these accounts, I guess the most common places to look for these accounts are in the hundreds of surviving Sumerian clay tablets. There's also the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees, which are two apocryphal books. And all of these accounts tell a very, very similar story of gods who came down from heaven to bestow civilization upon mankind. Sounds a bit familiar?
Yeah.
They're known to us by many names, including Watchers or the Anunnaki, which translates as those who from heaven to earth came. So those would probably be Caligastia's staff of 100 would be the Watchers or the Anunnaki. There's an old Babylonian myth called the myth of Atrahasis, which tells of the gods and how a great council was created to rule over mankind. That sounds pretty familiar. These gods revealed forbidden arts and sciences to humanity. These gods fall from grace through pride. They mate with indigenous humans and give birth to giant offspring known to us as the Nephilim, which you mentioned just now. The Nephilim is actually a Hebrew word meaning those who have fallen. It's translated into Greek as giants. So in some versions of the Bible, in the Genesis account that I just wrote, it doesn't say the Nephilim were on earth. It actually says giants were on earth. But that's just a translation thing. It means the same, referring to the same people.
And these Sumerian tablets as well. Recalling off the top of my head, there was some research done by a gentleman that escapes me right now. But some of the stories about the creation, as per the Sumerian tablets, talking about the planets, but in a poetic language, and also the ones who came to the planet, that came to this planet. I'm not sure if they referred to them as the Anunnaki or some such. But just to compound what you're saying, the striking similarities, and I didn't realize the Sumerians actually had a history there with the original Nodites and the violet race and the ones who came before, otherwise known as the Andites, the Sumerians. But if only there's just more history or research done with the history that's already been made by those who came before to understand exactly what they were trying to say, rather than to dismiss them wholeheartedly as inferior and uncivilized depictions of a historic sequence. It is, but the fact remains as well. For the most part, we don't hear about it.
No.
I mean, for unlike possibly gentlemen like yourself and others of a similar interest in specific topics of this type of nature, for the most part, you don't find anything such at all in a history book about anything to do with the extended history of the planet and the races upon it. But it is almost vital. And if people were to understand this kind of past that we all share, as you are well aware, I think the story that we'd written up to this point would be quite different. But we don't tend to hear about it, do we?
No. Well, that's true. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. So, not too much time left, eh?
I'm sorry. Yeah, we've got 10 minutes. We're gonna keep going for as long as we can here.
All right. So I'll just very, very briefly talk about another field of science that's starting to support this as well, which is genetics.
Okay.
Genetics are great because we're talking about biologic uplift of the races of man. So that evidence should be there genetically. And more studies that are being done are actually showing these correlations. I'm sure on just about every science show that you watch, you see the period of about 35,000 to 40,000 years ago being a very, very specific and important date in the evolution of mankind.
Okay.
And that corresponds pretty much exactly to when Adam and Eve got here.
So they've actually traced that back genetically through a specialist in that field.
There are studies. I guess around 2004, some reports started being published relating to what's called the microcephalin gene.
Okay.
And apparently the microcephalin gene plays a critical role in the growth of the brain. That's all I know about it. I'm not a geneticist, but
no.
The results actually closely correlate with what the Urantia book says about the spread of the genetic and cultural contributions of Adam and Eve. It indicates that new genetic material was introduced into the microcephalin gene about 37,000 years ago, and that the rest of the microcephalin gene was approximately 990,000 years old. none of the obvious explanations for how the new material might have been introduced fit well with the results of the research. Nobody knows how it got there, this new genetic material.
And well, firstly, it's boggling the mind that they're able to do tests to indicate how exactly long ago these things were introduced into the biological system.
And that's where I'm going to have to fail you, because I don't understand how they do it. But I have read quite a few reports, and they can actually track migrations of people with certain genetic trackers or genetic traits.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen some of the dispersion maps, and they very, very closely correspond to what the Urantia book talks about, the dispersion of the Andite race, which is the mix of the three races.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. And as time goes on, I'm sure we're gonna see more and more and more
Correlation.
correlation. Yeah.
It's very good. Well, so all right, we have 5 minutes here. We're gonna have to get close to an end here, gentlemen. Is there anything, any other remarks you'd like to make about the Urantia book in this particular interview?
One thing that I do have to say, and I promised myself that we'd say this, is that I really have to give consideration to two websites.
Yeah, please.
That provided a lot of the information for what I've talked about here today.
Yes, please.
One is UB the News, which I spoke about at the beginning of the program, run by a guy named Halbert Katzen. A lot of the information that I talked about today is on that site. And there is another site called firstlegend.info,
Okay.
which talks about the correlation between the Sumerians and the Urantia book history and things like that. Those are absolutely invaluable sites, and I wouldn't have been able to hardly a thing after I told you the Urantia book story tonight without those two absolutely amazing researchers.
Okay.
So,
and there too, and you gentlemen, are you creating your own website as well?
yeah, that's a Perth Urantia book study group. The address is Perth ubsg.com.
Okay.
So
And they can contact you. That's you directly, you gentlemen directly.
That's
They
us,
can
that's
contact
us
you.
directly. There's contact information. There's links, and the links that I've just spoken of are on our site.
Okay.
So,
Terrific.
and
So,
there's also links to the online version of the Urantia book on our site as well.
Okay. Well, folks, by all means, if you have any further questions, contact me directly or contact these gentlemen as well to do that. Because this information is an incredible source for us to discover more about where we're going. A lot of the information that we do represent on the radio show is a lot to do with a lot of the more recent events, current events, world events, things that are going on right now that we really do have to become more aware of. And it does seem like at a time like this, there's just so much to take in. It fills the mind worth to bursting, and it's almost a blissful idea just to continue on in ignorant unawareness, just to avoid, trying to get a handle on all these things. But it must be said that the Urantia book, again, as an example, as to one of the reasons why we're doing the show is it just seems like an incredible source to help put together a large variety of dots, a lot of pieces of the puzzle in order to make really discerning choices and broaden our horizons as to what we're doing here. So I want to thank you both very much for coming on the program tonight, Peter Webb and Derek Grimm, for doing that. It's a real pleasure to have you on again, and I hope we could do it again, could explore some more.
Sure.
Sometime very soon.
Yeah.
I'll just ask. We have a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to squeeze it out for as long as we can possibly do it before I have to say goodnight. Do you see the relevance of this book? Because we had discussed this when we met, although so many weeks ago, when you gentlemen were coming onto the show for the first time. The relevance of this material is for you and me quite poignant and quite important. Do you see a real correlation between what you describe and what the book describes as to the events, the rebellion of this planet, and then where we are today? Does it seem like it is the missing link to describe as to where we have been and where we are now? And could you really sense that if things had gone the way that planned, the way that celestial hierarchy usually plans these things, things would have turned out quite different? And if they could have turned out quite different,
Not going to remember this whole question, but
do you see us pulling it back for the brink? Even despite, if it's true that we don't have this spiritual connection at the moment, if it's true that our circuitry is still cut off, where do we stand?
I think what we've just talked about in this whole history and why it's so important is because it colors everything. It colors who we are, how we think, and everything today, because we don't know how it's supposed to be. If you know what I mean.
We really don't know any different.
That's right.
How
And
life is.
if things had gone on as they had supposed, I don't think we could even imagine what our planet would be like if things had progressed as they should have. I think that the best way to explain it is that technologically, maybe intellectually, we're becoming advanced, but spiritually, we got a lot of work to do.
Having said that, however, I would challenge you, gentlemen, to say that if it's the case that the circuitry at this particular stage is cut off, and in regards to the Urantia information, we are still bereft in the sea of, perpetual purgatory, I believe that there is grounds and there is reason to believe that within inside us there is something of a spark of divine connection, inasmuch as we have the ability and the capacity to make sound decisions of a wholly different nature than the ones we're currently making, in terms of how we govern ourselves, how we treat each other, the way we guide our children, we educate, we help one another, the sense of community and humanity that is sadly lacking for the most part, the majority of the continents on this planet. With or without this circuitry, if the case is that we're still cut off, we still have the means and capacity to make sound decisions and make a big change.
Absolutely. Yep, for sure.
Definitely.
Yep. As individuals, nothing's changed.
Because I think in what we've discussed tonight, there is a little bit of a flavor of downer, just because of knowing the history. For the most part, if we think shorter term, it's a pretty rough ride and fairly off the beaten track. Didn't go where it was supposed to go. However, there is the means and the grounds for us to bring it back on track, with or without direct divine intervention at this point.
We can only do our best.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and we do have a direct connection to the Universal Father to help us make our decisions, as
And
we
each
talked
other.
about before, and each other. That's right. So, I mean, it is there, the possibility and the opportunity.
Good. I wanted to leave it on that note because I want everyone to have that in mind, that for the reality of this situation, we have the means to bring it back from where we are, but we have to start thinking in a different way. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for coming on tonight again. It's been a real pleasure, and I hold you to it. You have to come back again. You promise?
Oh, we do. Yeah.
Yes, we do.
All
Thank
right.
you very
We love
much for
coming
tonight. We do.
Very good. Peter Webb and Derek Grimm, gentlemen from the association here in Perth, Western Australia, for Urantia. Hope you've enjoyed the show tonight, folks. We have to run right to commercial. We've gone out of time already.